So, all right. I'll make this official for my colleague Brett. This is officially the beginning of Esoteric Astrology Adventure, number 117B, page 433. And we're beginning at about 1 hour and 3 minutes or so, maybe a little less. Again and repeatedly, students must remind themselves that we are considering the impact of energy upon energy units, all qualified, that is, by one of the various aspects or attributes, and producing appearance. The quality is internal, and the appearance reflects the quality, but the appearance is relatively external. Energy is free, in a way, and energy units have confined the energy, or are confinements of the free energy. When energy impacts an energy unit, you wonder whether that impact is really a directed force. And I'm going to sort of ask that here. I put the question up. Is an energy impact really a directed force? Sometimes you might wonder, what is the difference between the Shambhala force and the Shambhala energy? And look at the different contexts in which they are used, if they are being used by DK with special and specific care. Sometimes he says, look, I mean exactly what I say here. I'm choosing my words with care, sometimes with more care than he may usually choose his words. So I'm sure that, given his accomplishment, all words are well chosen. Okay, all qualified and producing appearance, and with the response of those energy units, students are considering this, the response of the energy units to the streams of force which reach them from the furthest center. Well, what is the furthest center? Furthest center? Well, let's call it practically the Pleiades, sort of as the hub of the wheel, and the center most identified with the one about whom not to be said, our local super constellational logos. But the furthest center, of course, well, it's relative, isn't it? It would be the universal logoic center. It would be the one. It would be the one of all cosmos. And obviously we're not really talking about that. We're talking in relative terms, somewhat practical terms. We're talking about the three super constellations, the Great Bear, Sirius, and Pleiades, but the most important of those, really, is this great cluster we call the Pleiades, of some 800 stars or more. They keep on discovering more all the time. How many will it be? So we are, and DK did use the word force, streams of force. Energies impact energy units as streams of force. And sometimes I just like to say, although maybe it leaves something to be desired, that force is directed energy. Energy seems to expand in all directions simultaneously, and when there is a specific directional application of that energy, I think we call it force. At least that's one way I try to explain it to myself. A specific directional application of energy is called force, at least for me. It is in the development of response to distant points of contact and emanating sources of energy that the needed sensitivity is produced. Sensitivity, well, remember that, interestingly enough, we are in the Sirian school to a certain extent, and Sirius is the brilliant star of sensitivity. And with Leo, which has so much to do with humanity, what is cultivated or developed in Leo is sensitivity. And Neptune and Venus are sensitive planets, and we are particularly under the guidance of Venus, which is under the guidance of Neptune, and so forth, under the guidance of Sirius. That sensitivity comes all the way down, and Sirius, well, look at the sensitivity line, from Sirius to Leo to Neptune, one of the veiled esoteric rulers, to Venus, and then to our Earth, a sort of a fivefold descent. So it is in the development of response to distant points of contact, and for us, well, Sirius is certainly distant. DK talks about its tremendous distance from the Earth. Astronomically, it's 8 light years away, and we talk about 8 light years as if it's a small amount, but just imagine our normal speeds in trying to find ourselves there. We'd have to travel at spiritual warp speed, wouldn't we, to be there? Of course, since we are everywhere simultaneously, it's just a question of changing focus in order to be any place. To be any place is to focus upon it, because we're already embracing all of space. But of course, our power to do so is limited, given our particular human development at this time. So when DK talks in harmlessness, the definition of it is the expression of the life of the man who realizes himself to be everywhere. You know, that's a real arresting statement. We are everywhere, and we can change our focus theoretically. But actually, it's only an imaginative focus that we can change at this point. Only the true universal logos is consciously everywhere and can focus upon anything at any time within the entire cosmos, and can do so practically. Speculative thought. It is in the development of response to distant points of contact and emanating sources of energy, directed as forces, I would add, that the needed sensitivity is produced, because there's so many things we haven't really contacted yet. We are oblivious to them. We are opaque to them, and we can develop sensitivity to increasingly subtle sources, or at least some sort of detection of their impact. Detection of impact. I'll put that down. Sensitivity, generally speaking, is of a threefold nature. Sensitivity to that which is found within oneself. A lot of human development is going on right now, people trying to know themselves. It's a Leo thing. It's moving towards the individuation, not individualization, but individuation, the person really coming to himself and knowing who he is, which involves the retrieval of past lives as well. Sensitivity to that which is found within oneself. This, when the consciousness is adequately self-sufficient, a Leo thing, opens the door for the entrance of energies coming from the middle center, which is the soul. Or maybe, from Sirius to a certain extent, as the Sirius, Leo, and the soul are so closely interrelated, though on different levels. When the consciousness is adequately self-sufficient, and I suppose this is a question of the unfoldment of the fifth petal, giving either egocentrism or later aspiration, then it opens the door to energies coming from the middle center, and the solar angel gets involved in this in a more directed way, because the human being has reached the point where it can begin to respond directly to that higher power solar angel. I speak in symbols, and for those whose knowledge of cosmic location and of points in time and space will enable them to comprehend a big, big hint here, for the psychological astronomers. And to the uninitiate, I simply say respond to soul impact. But, the middle center, middle in what sense? Well, we've been given a lot of middleness lately. We've given the Great Bear and the Pleiades with Sirius in the middle. Another triangle, Great Bear, Pleiades with the Little Bear in the middle. But I do think the middle center, which inspires the soul and the hierarchy, there's every reason to think that it is Sirius. So there is a Sirius Leo soul connection. We know that the Sirius festival is celebrated at the time of the Leo full moon, which is actually impending here, not too far away in this year, 2013. And it is at a certain point, passing the midway point between the second and third initiation, that people really do begin to respond in a more conscious way to Sirius, and especially after the third degree. But that kind of decision at a middle point leads to the possibility of becoming a Sirian disciple, at the 3rd degree, and an Sirian 1st degree initiate at the 5th degree, and a Sirian transfigured initiate at the 7th degree, such as the Christ and the Buddha are becoming at this time. Interesting that the Buddha was to have taken the path to Sirius, but probably will not now. All of this is about his choices along the way, but the Christ, who may go other places, will return to Sirius. So this is about knowledge of cosmic location of points in time and space. We do become responsive to the middle center. In a funny kind of way, our sun, or solar logos, is kind of a middle center because it relates to the number 4, and it's a heart center within a cosmic logos, and the heart is always the middle, isn't it? The heart has 3 above, throat, ajna, and head center, and 3 below, solar plexus, sacral, and base of the spine center. So it's all about heart and the sources from which the heart energy comes. So another point of sensitivity to that which emanates from the centers left behind. There are little centers in the human body which were active at a previous time and which should be left behind, or those streams of vital energy which lie active and focused below the threshold of waking consciousness. They have become habitual in a way. They're automatic. We constantly are leaving behind, as we rise, the lower centers with which we were previously involved. Like so much of what's going on becomes instinctual. So we can call this rising through the centers. How about that? The energy or the force from which becomes instinctual. They stir the threads of memory. The threads of memory lead back to the functioning of these earlier centers. Sensitivity to the past, it's a bit like trying to retrieve one's past incarnations. They draw backward the glances. I turn me on my forward path and vision once again the long-held joys of earth and flesh and kin. The man is rushing forward toward the possibility of freedom, but then the voices of earth speak, and they stop him in his tracks, and the thunder of the sounds of earth shuts out the voice of God. I turn me on my forward path and vision once again the long-held joys of earth and flesh and kin. I lose the vision of eternal things. The voice of God dies out. They draw backward the glances, and there magic in the energy of the eye. And there lies magic in the energy of the eye, of the onward moving point. They draw backward the glances of the onward moving point, and there lies magic in the energy of the eye. The eye can look forward, the eye can look backward, the eye can be focused in the present. To be in the present is very middle. It's very fourth ray, to be in the presence, it relates to the fourth ray. To look forward is to go with the rays of aspect, but the third ray is the ray of memory and connects those memory threads, the third ray and the seventh ray, to things performed before. The third ray is like memory, and the seventh ray is like recollection. They stir the threads of memory, they draw backward the glances, and there lies magic in the energy of the eye, of the onward moving point, the pilgrim on his way. They condition through ancient habit the responsiveness of the units in the form. We are certainly an aggregate of habit patterns, some of which we've forgotten, and we are surprised to find ourselves doing certain things. We say, well, when did I build up that type of response? It seems to have come with me. Master Morya says, study the games of children, for in that you will understand much of where they have been and who they are. So think back upon the games you might have been playing as you played in those early days, imaginatively as a child, and perhaps it tells us something. It will tell you something, tell me something about where it is we have been and what we have done. So there's sensitivity so far to that which is found within oneself, and more or less in the present, perhaps. And of course, the soul is also there, even in the present. There is sensitivity to the past. This is backward looking and has more to do with the third aspect of divinity, to that which emanates from the centers left behind. And there are many of those centers which really have to be sealed off. You know, when you talk about sealing the door where evil dwells, we're sometimes talking about sealing the door where the past dwells. Evil comes from the past. It's a condition of limitation and a refusal to leave the limitation behind. They stir the threads of memory. They draw backward the glances. We turn to the left, in a way. Is this the magic of the left-hand path? And there lies magic in the energy of the eye. There's a hint thrown in here. So it's the left eye, particularly, turning to the left. The left is associated with memory, and well, perhaps the right with the present, and the middle path with the future, although we could turn them around in other ways. Sometimes you would think that the path of spirit is totally on the right, path of memory and the past on the left, and the path of the soul in the center. But other times, when the triangle revolves to the right point, then the central path is the royal road to Shambhala, and it indicates the first ray mode of progress. Can we, through the eye, direct our consciousness backward towards the origin of our habit patterns? Can we evoke those things or subdue those things? This is something that I would really want to ponder on, and maybe you will too. And then, okay, so the first thing was the first type of sensitivity was to the soul, which is considered the present in a way. The second type is to the past and to those energy threads which lead to centers that were active before and are now probably unconscious, though we might say that here, that under Pluto, we must reawaken our knowledge of the expression of these earlier centers and the degree to which they express in our nature now. All right. Then finally, the developed sensitivity which emerges from the furthest center. The furthest center. Well, sometimes Shambhala is called the bright center lying far ahead. And so something further is indicated here, but it does come through the monad, I suspect. At first unconsciously employed and later consciously directed and attuned. A fully magnetic and attractive sensitivity. Those words, magnetism and attraction, this sounds Sirian, but could represent a source even further. It would be enough for the human being to develop the Sirian responsiveness, the Sirian type of sensitivity. We are not very sensitive. We have certain developments that indicate growing sensitivity, but when you think about what it might be possible to respond to and what we have veiled from possible registered impact in our nature, the proportion is huge. What we are sensitive to is dwarfed by that which we might be able to respond to. So the furthest center, perhaps our location in time and space will say something about this. This is very solar, in a sense. As I already said, our sun is a middle center in a cosmic logos. So this might be solar in a certain sense. The second of these, and I don't know why it's placed second, because usually it's, the third aspect is not placed in the second place, but maybe more planetary. And here, a developed sensitivity which emerges from the furthest center. It may be Sirius, but it may be something even further beyond. Orion is connected with this. and ultimately maybe even even the Buddhic aspect of the Pleiades may be involved, because they are not a group which delivers only that which relates to intelligence and form. Forget not that true interplay imposes the condition of reciprocity. It's not just a question of receiving impacts and doing nothing. There has to be a response. We are, in a way, being evoked. There is a kind of invocation sent forth, and our response is what is evoked by that invocation. Invocations not only extend upward, they extend downward as well. Forget not that true interplay, and that's what we're talking about, between a further center and the registering center. We're talking about developing a sensitivity to those further centers. It involves a condition of reciprocity, meaning we have to in some way respond, not just register. So we must respond and not just register. But I suppose registry or registration must come first before there can be mobilized some sort of conscious response. Sometimes there can be an unconscious response when we simply react. But let's just put it like this way. Reaction is not response. And that the 2 points or termini of a line vibrate in unison, and we are speaking here in the antichironic language, or this is expressed in antichironic language. So how far is that further terminus for any one of us? How far is it for our group? How far is it for humanity as a whole? Shambhala in a way, but we're talking about distant sources. And when we talk about Sirius, or let's say the Pleiades and Capricorn, none of us is going to respond directly to the Lord of the constellation Capricorn. We can barely respond to our own master, But by a line of Davic transformation, as used in electricity when you transform a higher a voltage to a lower, by this line of Davic transformation, we eventually do receive some type of energy which qualitatively is in resonance with a distant source, which we cannot really touch directly. We probably cannot even touch planetary energies. Well, directly, we need that Davic line of Davic transformation. We're not going to be talking to the Lord of the planet Jupiter, who is greater than even Sanat Kumara or our planetary logos. We have to rise high in initiatory status to have any kind of reciprocal contact with the Lord of our world. It's a long way off. So we touch these distant sources by the line of transformational or transformed transmission, stepped down transmission from those sources. And the different orders of devas are the energy centers which are reducing the total impact and presence of the distant centers into a manageable flow that can touch us. But still it pays to attune imaginatively to these sources, because that will invoke the action of these Davic lives, which can make it possible for the distant sources, at least qualitatively, if not in full intensity, to reach us. A consideration of a hint given earlier as to the symbolism and significance of the 3 eyes available for man's use will be found illuminating, and their relation to the heart and throat will prove evocative of knowledge. This sounds like a ponder on this. The head center associated with the 3rd eye, particularly the heart center with the right eye, the throat with the left eye, and the throat will relate to the past, the heart to the present of the soul, and the distant center to the 3rd eye itself. Is it to be considered in a way Sirian? Is the heart within the head to be considered Sirian? Is the jewel in the heart within the head to be considered Pleiadian? All of these things start from distant sources, these energy streams. It's enough to know that they do. It's enough to think of these distant sources in excuse me. Yes, it's enough to think of these distant sources as they exist in astronomical space. And that gives us a sense of relation, but if we have a true sense of proportion, we'll realize that we are never getting the full blast. Thank goodness we can't get the full blast of Shambhala. Look, Shambhala is very local compared to these different sources. How can we think we're, talking to the Pleiades? Everything's out of proportion. The trouble with a lot of New Age thought is it doesn't have the cosmology and the sense of relative magnitude of the things involved, and therefore in glamour loses the sense of proportion. The Pleiadians and the black backyard and all that kind of thing. Only one being from Sirius, we are told, has ever visited our solar system in the long history. Well, at least that's one of the statements DK made. So it's good to know where it all comes from, but we have to know the modes of transformation, the modes of stepping down by which it reaches us in a qualitatively analogous fashion, but not with anywhere near full intensity, obviously. So they relate to the three centers above referred to, and in their wider connotation relate to the three planetary centers. Well, the Great Bear, I think in this case, will relate to the head center, or to the middle of the third eye. Although all of these great sources can relate to the third eye, but the right eye, the heart will relate to Sirius, and the throat to the Pleiades. But as I say, because there are different rays existing in these great beings, it all depends which one may be emergent at a particular time in their developmental cycle. And, when thinking about that great relativity, we would lose our bearings. We only know what they seem to give now, that the first ray gives that the Great Bear gives the first ray, Sirius the second ray, and the Pleiades the third ray. There are other factors, as we know, the monastic part of Sirius, its fifth ray, the Buddhic part of the Pleiades. When it comes to the Great Bear, well, it's mostly identified with the first ray as far as we can tell. One of my friends said to consider it related to the third aspect. I don't know. I haven't done that, but there are other rays for constellational logoi, for solar logoi, for planetary logoi, not just one ray. They relate to the three centers above referred to, and in their wider connotation relate to the three planetary centers: humanity, hierarchy, and Shambhala, and of course the throat center. Well, this is pretty obvious in our teaching: humanity relating to the throat center, hierarchy to the heart center, and Shambhala to the head center and to the three eyes. In a way, the left eye to humanity, the right eye to hierarchy, and the central, all-synthesizing, all-seeing eye, Shambhala. Let's call it that, Shambhala, the all-seeing eye. The analogies that DK gives us help us draw our universe of thought together, and to see how the actual universe, at first just our local cosmos, is drawn together and related, a far wider and yet more closely related horizon. That is what Master DK promises us in the study of esoteric astrology. But I think you can see that we're not only studying esoteric astrology. As we do this, we are studying the ageless wisdom and many branches of occultism, and hopefully it's not too confusing, this attempt to weave many things together so that they are more closely related in our minds and do not remain separate, unrelated items of knowledge, which are a great burden. The more relationship there is between the items of knowledge, the lighter these items become, and the more light-emitting they become. Further back still, well, I already dealt with this, lies a relation to the cosmic centers of the Great Bear, Sirius, and the Pleiades, all of which are centers within the one about whom naught may be said. The Great Bear, definitely the 7 head centers in the one about whom not may be said, and DK says that. Sirius, some ambiguity there. I think it may be part of a large solar plexus center, but some very good cosmologists have said you better relate it to the Ajna center of the one about whom naught may be said, to which I really relate the Little Bear, but I then give a connection between Sirius and the Little Bear. And then the Pleiades, which as a whole I think are the head center of the one about whom not may be said, but the 7 greatest among them related, I think, to the central jewel in the zodiac, which is the heart and the head center of the one about whom not may be said, or possibly to the throat center, because it has so much to do with the third ray, and if not the Pleiades, then what? And how many of the Pleiades related to that throat center? Almost like a dual function there, but there may be some Maya-Virupic process going on which makes it possible for them to be both. Speculative. In between these planetary centers to which I have referred, and their distant cosmic archetypes, that's what the great emitting cosmic centers are to the lesser centers on Earth, Shambhala, hierarchy, and humanity, lie 3 systemic centers, which at this time are, and under cyclic law, are Saturn, Uranus, and Mercury, and this tells us something very interesting. Really, that at another time and under cyclic law, the planets might be different ones. You know, we realize that the 3 super principles are pretty much embodied in the 3 synthesizing planets, which are Uranus, Neptune, and Saturn. But at the present time, the 3 super principles in our solar system are not expressed, at least in any way that we can register strongly, by Uranus, Neptune, and Saturn, but instead by Saturn in the first place, Jupiter in the second, Venus in the third. So there is mutability in time and space and under cyclic law. What these cyclic laws are, even the so-called all-knowledge attained on the 3rd sublevel of the atomic plane will not give us that. Just the way the interior movements of stars within constellations can only be determined by a mathematics which far transcends anything that, he said, even the highest being in our solar system, I don't know if he includes or excludes the solar logos, can fathom, more than the greatest life in our solar system can fathom. Does that include the solar logos? We're dealing with big things, and our astrophysics and our astronomers, astrophysicists and astronomers, are just lifting a tiny veil, many of them, or the veil in a slight way, many of them on their way eventually, I think, into the path of absolute sonship, where a lot of these, where the higher universal mathematics are dealt with. Interesting how the 5 goes to the 1, and so many of these have such a strong 5 in their nature, going on to the foremost path, the path of absolute sonship. But then, who knows? There is an analogy, just hit me. When you look at 9, you know, and we're over here, look at that. It may be that the 7 paths have a lot to do with Saturn and its 6 surrounding schemes in a greater Saturn. And the 2, it's almost like we're looking at a representation of the Pleiades, a 9, with Atlas and Pleione having a connection with Uranus and Neptune especially, and then all of the other sisters, excuse me, talking too fast and in too excitable a manner. That all of the other sisters are relating to this sevenfoldness. That's sometimes how the intuition works. You know, suddenly 2 patterns, one on a very high level, one on a very low level, seem to gel resonantly. You say, oh, there must be a connection. So, it may be that the other ones of the Pleiades, the father and mother of the Pleiades, representing the first and what? Second aspect in a sense, because the father is the first and the mother is the second who becomes the third. And the son is really the third who becomes the second. Well, I don't think I can get into that too deeply except to say that in the structure of the Pleiades in the jewel box is a kind of structure of our solar system represented here in chart number 6. And when we're looking for how to get a throat center out of the Pleiades, it may just be the 7. But we also need to find that jewel in the very center of the zodiac, which is the heart and the head center of the one about whom naught may be said. Very awkward to keep on saying one about whom naught may be said. It's much easier to write OAW and then have your, I don't know, what do they call it? Something in the word processing program. It types that for you, You don't have to keep on typing it. So sometimes when we have abbreviations for things, that's a synthesizing process. It's an abstracting process. In other words, let's just say here, one about whom is a synthesizing, abstracting process for the entire one about whom naught may be said. So we rise to a point, and the point contains everything below it, and we are becoming more efficient then in terms of time, and can do more in less time and cover more space within less space. It's just an analogy. So, okay, and in between these planets, in between these again, between the great super constellations and the planets, are again to be found a zodiacal triangle of Leo, Pisces, and Capricorn, representing in this case Leo, the central eye, Pisces, the right eye, Capricorn, the left eye. Leo connected with Shambhala, Pisces with the hierarchy, Capricorn with humanity. What a very fruitful consideration this 18-fold tabulation gives us. 3 across, 6 down, 3 times 6, 18. We can really tie a lot of aspects of our local cosmos system together by doing this. Now, there is a diagram here, and I don't have that diagram, so I have to turn to page 435 in Esoteric Astrology, and it'll give a diagram. It says see figure. So we'll do that. Okay. Well, yes, it's a representation of these 3 triangles. Leo, Saturn, Shambhala connected with the third eye. Pisces, Uranus, hierarchy with the right eye and with the heart, as the other is the head. Capricorn, Mercury, humanity, the left eye, and the throat center. Things drawn together for us so that we can see more accurately the relations between. And, of course, it is a very great joy, speaking as a somewhat Mercurian type, to see relations. If you think about, how to approach pure reason on the Buddhic plane, it's to see many, many relations, and they all begin to gel and to configure, and before you know it, you are witnessing a reflection of archetypal purpose. You're witnessing the relations as divine love intends them to be, because divine love, pure reason, and right relations all have a very close connection, a relation with each other. DK is always using the word relate, and he says he can't really find a better word, even though he knows it's very repetitious. So we have seen, and if you want to focus on those, you just stop the program and you can just focus on the triangles we've just looked at. When the significance of this is grasped, then the following interesting points will appear. I give them to you for what they are worth to you. He's pouring out the wisdom, and some of us are like hard soil and we just deflect the nourishment, and others are the type of plowed soil that are in position to take what he gives as seeds which can actually grow. Not all seeds will grow, of course, because the type of soil we present will not be the proper environment for them to grow. And if the soil were more refined, perhaps they could grow. I give them to you for what they are worth to you, and that worth is dependent upon the goal ahead of you, where you stand today in time and space. And hopefully more and more of us are standing at the position where we can begin to obliterate, lift the veil upon time and space and realize that it is not an absolute but a relative condition. Whether you can ever get rid of time and space in the ultimately cosmic sense, I have my doubts. But in terms of the perception of time-space as a reality compared to deeper realities, which are more timeless and spaceless, I mean, being everywhere and having all times be as one, I mean, to the person who is everywhere, how does time actually pass? It's only in relation to something else. So if the universal logos is everywhere simultaneously, can it be that any time really passes? The entire process is his. Every apparent movement is his, and there is no, well, I wonder if there's any movement even perceived, because it's all him. But I suppose, and ultimately the truly timeless, spaceless state is the that, the absolute, which is sometimes called space, interestingly enough, which shows that there have to be different understandings of the term space. Okay, so, going back and forth, I'll make this figure here. Triangle 3, triangle 2, triangle 1. So we can go maybe back and forth. Triangle 3 depicts the interplay of three streams of force, which in this particular world cycle, again an ambiguous term, condition and basically influence ordinary humanity. So that is the Pleiades, Capricorn, and Mercury. But of course they have their higher correspondences and also influence disciples. But forget not that humanity itself constitutes a great center in the life of the planetary logos. These are marvelous things here we're about to get into. Let's see how far we're getting into them before we have to change. Average humanity for this third triangle. Though, Mercury does lead into the mysteries, and Capricorn, the sign of initiation, so there's let Mercury speed the group upon the upward way. And Capricorn is the mountaintop, interestingly belonging right there at the top of the mountain. That triangle. Mountains are triangles. So yes, it has application to average humanity, but also to the disciple, very definitely. Capricorn connotes density, at least in its lower expression, firm foundations, concretization, the mountain of karma, not just the mountain of initiation, but the mountain of karma that holds down the struggling soul until the balance is achieved and harmony is restored. The mountain of karma that holds down the struggling soul, or the mountain of initiation, which must eventually be climbed and surmounted, and we can use our karmic circumstances to give us the strength that it required to climb. In other words, obstacles are possibilities, says Master Morya. We run into all kinds of karmic things we might rather not do, but they can build faculty within us and strengthen us for the great initiatory climb. It signifies, Capricorn signifies, therefore, a great force of liberation. As a matter of fact, when looking at the various crises, Capricorn, the energy of Capricorn is associated with liberation. A great force of liberation or expansion, interestingly enough, liberation and expansion. Expansion being the prelude to complete liberation. It signifies, therefore, the great force of liberation which both drives into experience and brings experience to an end from the angle of humanity. Well, the earthbound soul. Capricorn is density. When humanity is forced to descend and is by its own weight remains in the lower worlds where it experiences all these kinds of things, why should not the Capricorn energy be behind that forced descent? Certainly Saturn is. This is the major stream of force in this particular triangle at the time, and maybe it's major because the planetary lord is the greatest, greater than the lord of Mercury, and certainly greater than the being who ensouls humanity, but maybe it has something to do also with the time we're in. So it's almost as if we, in the diamond shape that Capricorn can represent, the inverted mountain and the mountain above, we are being forced down into a concretized point. The solar angels under Capricorn made that concretized point possible. They gave us individualization and ended our participation mystique, in which we could not differentiate really anything in any way of mental isolation, isolate anything as different from anything else in a conscious manner. So the little point at the bottom of that mountain is the individualized human being, who then ascends, broadening and broadening his nature, and then reascends again to the point, interestingly enough. What is that point? That point is found, the traveling points of light to that great center where the one point stands. That point is the point of absolute union, which is the fruit of initiation. Mercury brings in that quick, intuitive mind, which interprets experience, relates it to a larger archetype, fosters the growth of intuition, mind ascending to intuition, Manas becomes Buddhi, and relates the inner spiritual man to the outer human being, either via the soul personality connection or via the antichironic connection. The antichirona relating the triad to the soul-infused personality and the monad to the soul-infused personality. Relating the inner spiritual man to the outer human being in such a way that their future unity of purpose, plan, and effort is assured. So there's complete communication of that which is intended above to that which exists below. So Mercury keeps us informed. The higher informs the lower via the agency of Mercury. DK is certainly playing this mercurial function for us at this time, informing us of purpose, plan, making sure that our efforts accord with plan and with purpose. Mercury brings about those changes in mental perception which eventually enable humanity to act as the mediating interpreter, telling to that which is below of that which is above, informing that which is below of that which is which is above. And DK, of course, is a great interpreter for us, isn't he? Taking these things of which we have no knowledge and with which we would have no contact except for how he presents them to us and relating them to our life below. That is a huge function and requires a master for whom Mercury is working powerfully. You kind of wonder whether the monad of the Buddha originated on Mercury, whether the monad of Master DK originated on Mercury, at least in a planetary sense. The solar sense is another thing. The monad is that which finds its home within the sun. But when it comes to the planetary origin of various monads, it would seem that the Christ would be more a monad of Venus, and maybe that's true of Master KH as well. I don't know. I simply speculate. Mercury brings about those changes in mental perception which eventually enable humanity to act as the mediating interpreter between the higher worlds and the three lower kingdoms of nature, for which man is the macrocosm. Thus Mercury institutes the threefold activity of this center, humanity, in the body of the heavenly man, which we struggle to perceive and comprehend, and which we regard as forming the three phases of mind. The humanity is the throat center in the body of the heavenly man, and we struggle to perceive, it's a kind of a mind, we struggle to perceive this threefold activity, which is reflected in us in three levels of mind. The abstract mind, which is, well, we'll call it pure manas, at least as far as the cosmic physical plane is concerned. The son of mind, the soul, and Mercury is, or Manasaputra, and Mercury is frequently associated with what is called the son of mind, or that spark of mind. That's son of mind. I'll just do it this way. Okay, so Mercury is having something to do as well as Venus with the solar angels. Sometimes the solar angels are called the Manasaputra, but the type of mentality that we have from within the egoic lotus is called our soul consciousness, and man within the causal body is a kind of Manasaputra, a kind of son of mind. That's what it means, son of mind. And the concrete mind, the mental body. So average humanity is an expression of the concrete mind. Disciples, aspirants and disciples are increasingly expressions of the son of mind, and the initiate who is focusing within the triad is the expression of pure manas, or the abstract mind, as well as the expression of other triadal factors. So Mercury is bringing about a connection between distant sources and our present condition, and interprets the relationship between. You see, we might say interpreter. An interpreter reveals the relationship between the unknown and the known. And that certainly is true of the Master Decay. I mean, when you think about what we at least have a chance of knowing about because of his work, and what we actually know here and now and from our own experience, it's a vast difference. And he is interpreting these distant factors to us, so bringing them closer so that our approach to them may be facilitated in time and in quality and in effectiveness. And their correspondence in substance energy, the right eye, the left eye, and the third eye, but those are not in order. Okay, notice, he makes us think. These are not given in order, are they? Because the third eye really has to connect more, I think, with the abstract mind, with the spiritual triad. The son of mind more with the right eye, and the concrete mind more with the left eye. There is this whole question about whether the soul is in the center. In a way, the soul is in the center, and the third eye can be considered in a way the eye of the soul, but it's also the eye of Shiva, or the eye of the first aspect. So you get into this kind of question when you try to arrange, as I've been saying, the three etheric channels up the spine. Is it left, right, and center, meaning 3, 1, and 2, or later on, is it really 3, 2, and 1 up the center, which I think it is. All right. In this particular world cycle, it is Capricorn which is producing the moment of crisis. Well, it's the one most related to humanity, and humanity is that kingdom, and fourth kingdom, in which this fourth initiation through which our planetary logos is passing is most experienced due to numerical resonance. Capricorn, well, Leo is the human kingdom in a way. Capricorn is related to it. Leo is also Shambhala. Maybe Leo has something to do with the direct connection of Shambhala to humanity. But Capricorn, challenging us through the law of elevation to rise, is stirring the ancient past and making it rebel. So we have a rebellion of the ancient past. That's what these wars are all about. And they are producing a counter current to the new direction, which is elevatory from Capricorn. It's a crisis of initiation plus a crisis of destruction. Related primarily to the mineral kingdom, there's a strong Vulcan in Capricorn. It rules condensation of the densest kind, and it has a lot to do with the mineral kingdom, and people with strong Capricornian nature are related to the mineral kingdom, in various ways, through science, through industry, through beauty. They gravitate in that way, and they want firm, concrete foundations. A crisis of initiation with elevatory potentials, plus a crisis of destruction, putting pressure upon the things that will not correspond to the archetype. Saturn puts pressure and destroys, and its greater lord, Capricorn, puts a greater pressure, paralleled by a crisis of mental perception that's coming through Mercury, precipitated by Mercury. So elevation, destruction, and mental perception. Let's put those three together. Right, and here we have the need to correct this and make it that way. Okay. It is this mental perception plus world participation, for these are world wars, and due to modern science and communications and the ability to make bodies travel through space, we do have world participation. It is this mental perception plus world participation in the crumbling of the mountain load of karma. And that means, of course, so much karmic interaction of sometimes a very dire kind occurring, which heralds the vision of the new day, because the mountain of karma, when uncrumbled, blinds the vision. So let's just say, if the mountain of karma remains intact, the vision is blocked. The clearing of karma induces or conduces towards the vision of the new day from the mountaintop. So the light of day is seen in Scorpio, and the dawning of the Scorpio, in a way, is more like, well, in this comparison, more like the light before the dawn, but or perhaps the rising sun. Well, I think of the full sun being visible at the mountaintop, and Scorpio at least entering into the light of day before that full sun can be revealed. So we're going through some terrible things on our planet right now. You just read about the poor people being victimized in one way or another, and seemingly they don't deserve it. Maybe they don't, because sometimes there is offense, and sometimes those who are not karmically liable are affected by the general condition of things, and then that is compensated for later. There is a restoration for those who have suffered unjustly and for non-karmic purposes. But so much of the suffering is karma. I sometimes look at this terrible Middle East situation. I think of the Crusades. I think of the battle between the two religions of Christianity and Islam. I think of the way that many Muslims suffered under the Crusades, and the Jews also under the Crusades. And then I think of the way that the many Christians are suffering today. One wonders, who are these Christians? Are they reincarnated Christians from the Crusades, or are they reincarnated devotees of Islam in some way? Because you can certainly change religions and change groups, depends on where you're born. Anyway, there seems to be, in that situation, the crumbling of the mountain load of karma, a very, very important karma for our planet, which is solving a previous solar system, present solar system interaction right here on our planet. Well, it's tough. Nobody knows exactly where it's going, and the ancient prophecies seem to tell of dire things, followed by liberation, the return of the Christ, and peace for 1,000 years, during which Satan is bound, and Satan being the 666 of the lower powers of the instinctual form unguided by the light. Wouldn't be a bad thing to bind Satan as long as you can understand Satan in that respect. There's also a higher meaning for Satan, the revealer of light, the whole hierarchy of solar angels, the light bearers. But things have been turned upside down in our world, and the old religions of form and of the ancestral gods seem to be in preeminent places where they really should be lower than the religions of light revealed by the great light beings. And a great battle is being fought to see which can come out on top in the immediate future. It's a Taurian battle in a way. We don't want to be re-initiated into the mysteries of Earth. We want to be initiated into the mysteries of the supernal light. And we don't want the inverted five-pointed star which serves Taurian desire. We want the upright five-pointed star which serves the great light. That's what we really want. Okay, well, I think we've reached the end here of this part. Yes, I would say so. Trying to time myself over here, but it's not always an exactly accurate time because the different parts start at different times. This would be then the end of Esoteric Astrology Adventure number 117B, page 437, and continuing maybe beginning of Esoteric Astrology 117C, page 437, or if I can't continue, maybe I'll just begin again on 118. Hopefully that's not too confusing. All right, well, thank you, everybody, for enduring this and going through the process of trying to see how the wider cosmos relates to our immediate life here on Earth. DK has given it to us, but it's up to us to think of the connections. We are given certain connections, and we can. He said there has to be such a great deal of correlating work done, and that is that which under Mercury we are attempting to do here. So let's pause for a little while and go on if we possibly can later this evening.